You played a key role in those accomplishments, and you share in this success. Your financial support of this council is crucial. This organization, like any other, also needs its membership to attend events, to provide volunteer help, and to promote the organization to the community at large. Our board of directors would like to thank you very much for your excellent support this past year. This year will exceed last year in the scope of our activities. Our phone is ringing. There is an increased demand for our services. One example is our Star Grant. We serve as the pass-through organization for state, borough, and county funds that are earmarked for Adams County arts presenters, schools, and various arts programs here. We had money available to fund about half of the applicants' programs. As our president of the last 3 years, Melinda Warren, said in her letter in that report, we truly have gone from the Arts Council, what's that, to, oh, we better call them and get them involved. We've moved into a larger office at the Times Square building. We've expanded our office hours from 8 to 20 a week to try to meet the demand, and we've launched a corporate campaign to help fund this expansion. We have tried to maintain this council with volunteers in what are essentially staff roles, and we can't continue efficiently this way. Look around Adams County. How many service organizations do you see that are run by volunteers? There are not many. So we will be hiring an executive director sooner rather than later, and that will be a major step for us. It's certainly something that we need, and it will require us to find the funding for that position. It will also help us fulfill our mission and provide the services and programs that Adams County is asking from us. Another challenge for us this year is to fully utilize our volunteers. Perhaps some of you in this room have responded in the past on the membership form or the renewal form and said, I'd like to help you. And I apologize if we never responded to that. It's not because we don't want your help. Frankly, there was no one willing to take the role of coordinating volunteers. However, I'm happy to report that we now have a very capable person, Sue Williams, who's assumed those responsibilities. And I assure you that she is working to organize our records, and she will make every effort to match your talents with a role that the council might have. If you respond to Sue's call and spend some time in our office, you'll notice right outside our window the majestic theater marquee. Isn't it thrilling that Adams County might be the home to a performing arts center? The council was invited to be a part of this process from the very beginning. And I have come to believe that Gettysburg College sincerely wants this to be a community facility for everyone's use and enjoyment. Now, what will the council's role be with this major new arts presenter in town? That question will require our careful consideration. We know we will continue our work toward another long-standing goal, nurturing the audiences of tomorrow. The most important thing we do is establish arts programs in our schools. If you know school board members, please tell them this. Fund the arts programs in our schools. These are priceless experiences that help students become active members of the community and creative thinkers. They teach the importance of cooperation, responsibility, discipline. They teach the individual's role in the group setting. Students who participate in arts programs learn to love the arts and the joy that they bring us. Several weeks ago, our Continental Harmony composer, Robert Maggio, spent a day with Gail Jones music students at Lincoln Elementary. He worked with the band and small groups of students. He led them in improvising and creating their own new musical works. One sixth grader later told Mrs. Jones, "That's the most fun I ever had playing the clarinet." And that's something to take to heart as we face the challenges ahead for this organization. Accepting those challenges is a group of people you're about to meet, our officers and committee chairs. They'll give you a brief summary of what they do. Now, if you come this evening with a project, an idea, a question, or a concern, talk to the appropriate chairperson during our social hour after this program. We'd like to hear what you have to say. I'll start. I serve as program committee chair. Our committee is responsible for presenting a slate of arts performances throughout the year. We also set up a variety of different tours. Let's start over on this side of the room. Carl, you want to begin? Introduce yourself.
I'm Carl Held, I'm the Vice President of the Arts Council. And I'm at the President's beck and call.
Sue Williams, volunteer chair. As Chris said, I'm very enthusiastic about developing a volunteer corps, and you'll hear from me in a few minutes. Well, let's start. I serve as also vice chair Carl's position, and policy president. I have been on the board since almost the inception of the Arts Council, and I have always served the function of sort of going, flitting around from committee to committee and helping where I can, and have been just so excited about the growth of the membership, growth of the organization, growth of the budget. I have reluctantly volunteered to co-chair a fundraising committee, which has been very fledgling. The membership of this organization has been one of the primary funders of it, and we appreciate that very much. In addition to the grants that you as taxpayers have paid into mostly the state and some federal tax dollars, so grants have funded us. But we have to rely on some fundraising. That's what the fundraising committee does. That's separate from membership and corporate membership and corporate development. We have had a very small budget over the past, small goals, hope to grow them. Looking forward to the year 2000 as a major fundraising objective, in addition to what you've read in your program. Lenny King is going to do a tile for us, a commemorative tile that will be a fundraiser for the Arts Council. It will be in a design that's sort of in accordance and in celebration of our bicentennial as well, and all of the funds raised will go to the Arts Council, so we'll look for that, our membership, and others in the community to support the Arts Council in that way. And anybody that has any great fundraising ideas and wants to help fundraise, I'd love to hear from you.
Claire, would you introduce yourself?
I'm Claire Donahue, and I have recently chosen to leave room on the board for some other wonderful young blood and free blood. And I was fortunate enough to be membership chair for the past 3 years, and I will continue in that position. And Sue Williams works with me on that, and I try to help her out a little bit on the volunteer end. But we've expanded some of our membership levels, and we've also decided this year to try to make it a little less complicated by having our renewal cycles be in May and September. And we're working on reasons for you to keep your membership cards in your wallet with benefits available to our members. So if anyone is interested in membership, which is one of the benefits is being able to volunteer in this organization, or has any other interest in the Arts Council, I'd be happy to talk with you.
My name is Amy Gorman, and I'm very happy to be on the board. I've been involved in one capacity as nominating chair, and I may have called a few of you on the phone to ask if you might be interested in joining the board. I have recently been appointed chairship of the Arts in Education, and as Chris mentioned, this is quite an undertaking because our school districts have got to embrace the attitude of arts being of supreme importance when they go to budget. And that's going to be one of my main thrusts because of my involvement in the schools for over 25 years in the county. Please come to our meetings and all of our events. And this is a wonderful turnout. I thank you for coming.
I'm Patrice Smith, and I'm the publicist. I do the newsletter, and it's real easy to promote this organization because there's so much happening. Now, I don't have to work very hard. All I need to do really is just tell everybody what we're doing. These folks are the ones that put it all together, and then I just try to get the word out.
I'm Anne Marie Logue. I'm the treasurer of the organization, and I'm new in that position. So right now, I can tell you that from reviewing 1999's information and thus far in 2000, that the organization has indeed grown from the time that I was first approached to take this position. And a lot of it has to do with keeping track of the grants that come in and the restricted monies that come in. And that takes a lot of time, and as the organization grows, it's going to be almost a full-time position at some point in time. So your funds are more than welcome to help that executive director position.
Hi, my name is Judy Marty. I'm chair of the Grants Writing Committee, and I have been tasked chair of the Arts and Education Committee. And I also am now coordinating the STAR Grant program, which gives money to other area organizations. And I would like to let you know so that you can congratulate your local politicians that the funds come from the Pennsylvania Council on the Arts, but they also come from your county commissioners and from the Borough of Gettysburg. So when you see them, thank them, because they've been very generous in supporting that program.
Right. Tree Smith is a way to give us a look at a few upcoming events.
Okay. We're starting with the annual meeting. This is our first nice big public annual meeting where we have a real speaker and food. And we're hoping to continue and build on this so that we can not only have members, I mean, I'm singing to the choir here, but also your friends and your associates and even people that might be a little bit skeptical about what we're doing, and come and have a good time at the annual meeting. In about a week and a half, Melinda Warren, who is our new administrative officer, and Tom Jones, who is an accomplished baritone based in Boston, are going to present A Fine Romance. That is an evening of romantic music and Dobbin House food at one of the nicest places here in town, Dobbin House. It's February 12th. The Bloomsburg Theater Ensemble, based in Bloomsburg, Pennsylvania, one of the oldest arts and education geared theater groups, is bringing a program called Passage to America, the Immigrant Experience, to 11 of our schools in March. They're doing a public performance at 2 o'clock on March the 18th in the new Lincoln Elementary School, the old high school. And that is open to the public, and you're more than welcome. Tickets are probably going to be going on sale pretty soon. A couple of weeks for that at Gallery 30. Thank you, Mother. History Meets the Arts Bus Tour. This will be the third time that we'll present an historian who is a specialist in the artwork of the sculpture on the battlefield. That'll be during History Meets the Arts weekend, and our bus tour is on April the 15th. 16th. You were waiting for that. Okay. 16th. April 16th. Thank you. The Recyclable Art Contest, it'll be our fourth year of doing that. We had to narrow it down a little bit for a while, and now we've gotten some additional money, so we've expanded it to go K through 6. Kids in local public schools and private schools are invited to create art from recyclable materials. Last year, it was such a success because the kids who won, God bless them, donated the winning entries to the Land Conservancy of Adams County's art auction. And so they made money twice. It was wonderful. It was, the kids made money, and then they took their works and auctioned them off to the Land Conservancy. Didn't they, Deb? They sure did. Yeah. And it's a small town. In May, early June, we'll have the Gourmet Pig Roast, which has become an event for our members and their guests. And that ordinarily involves several different kinds of entertainment, kind of a hodgepodge of entertainment, and a real big pig. And a lot of good food and marvelous camaraderie. It's in the afternoon and early evening on a beautiful Sunday afternoon, generally. We're going to have the Adams County Traveling Children's Theater Troupe for the, what year is it? 5 or 6 or 7. Ann Griffith started the Adams County Traveling Children's Theater Troupe 6 years ago. And since that time, it has grown to provide local children an opportunity to do a workshop 8 weeks or so in the summer, and then travel to a half a dozen or more venues around the county and present a piece that they write and that Ann directs and produces. Thank you, That will be in late July
Or early August.
or early August. One of our biggest projects ever, if not our biggest project ever, is Continental Harmony. Chris alluded to it earlier. We were the only organization in Pennsylvania to win a grant from the American Composers Forum and the National Endowment for the Arts to have a professional composer create an original work of art, an original composition, to celebrate the millennium. These pieces, all 50 of them from 50 different states, are supposed to be performed somewhere in or around July 4th, 2000. Well, it just happens to be Adams County's bicentennial. And with a lot of good luck and a lot of good work from Judy Marty, we won that grant. We have since hired Robert Maggio, a marvelous man from Philadelphia with already some incredible composing credits to his name, and getting more. They're coming in now, more and more. He has already composed the first third of a piece that he will be presenting, that the Bicentennial Band will be presenting on July 4th at Gettysburg High School. It will be the world premiere of Adams County's birthday present to itself. And we are hoping that it'll be a piece that will continue to be played, partially or completely, for the next millennium. On that bill, on July 4th, will also, in addition to the Bicentennial Band, will also be the Adams County Junior County Band, 7th, 8th, and 9th graders. So we will see the beginnings of making music in Adams County and making music come to fruition with the Bicentennial Band. We'll also have Jubilate, which is an accomplished choral group run by Kermit Finstadt, and we encourage you to come and bring your friends. Keep an eye on the papers because there'll be a lot of information. If I'm lucky, there'll be a lot of information in the papers about that in the next couple of months. Art in the Orchard, thanks to Claire and Jack Donahue, has been a wonderful program for us on or about apple harvest time, where artists from Adams County are encouraged to bring, show, and sell their works in a gorgeous orchard setting at the Donahue Farm, which includes socializing, food, drink, entertainment, and our members are invited to come as our guests and to bring their guests to expand our own membership. That is a little bit of what's happening this year. Keep an eye on the papers, and as I said, if I'm lucky, you'll read about it. Thank you.
Folks, there's seats up here. Please feel free to come sit down. You don't need to stand.
Probably warmer up here, too.
Some of us who've been active with this organization since early in its history describe ourselves as founding members, when in fact we are almost founding members. There's only one founder who still lives here and is involved with the council. When I say involved with our work, that is an understatement. She has played a huge role in our growth and development. In her quiet and unassuming way, she has kept us on track. She's helped us understand what an arts council should be. She is the epitome of a devoted and determined volunteer. When I look at the programs that we've done, the ones that serve as best examples of what an arts council can do for its community, I see that they were her idea. The STAR Grant, the tile project at the Rec Park, where under the guidance of ceramic artist Lynn King, our senior citizens designed a beautiful backdrop for that stage, and our current Continental Harmony. She served as president, the first president, is currently secretary of the board. As our grant writer, she's been tremendously successful in getting us the funding that we rely on. She sets up the school residency programs when we bring in guest artists. It's really quite amazing to me that one person can accomplish so much. On the night when we give the first ever awards for volunteer service to this organization, the very first award goes to the founder of the Adams County Arts Council, Judy Marty.
And we did presented to Judy Marty, founder, Adams County Arts Council, in recognition of your dedication and service to the arts in Adams County, February 1. Well, thank you so much.
recognize volunteer efforts and give us all a bit of inspiration. We will continue to honor volunteers in the coming months at special events and in our newsletter. The Arts Council board members submitted nominations for recognition for volunteers last October, and a committee selected the 5 people that we honor tonight. We are doing their debt, especially for the example they set for the Arts Council in our county, and I am proud to introduce the first recipient of the Applause Award 2000. Casey Cook. We applaud you, Casey, for your lively involvement in the Arts Council from the beginning. Almost. You were a charter member of the programming committee and still continue serving on that committee today. You are a former board member and an organizer of the Artist Studio Tours. Casey, you have hosted wonderful wine and cheese gatherings in your home and promoted so many of our special events through the years. How did we ever forget your role as Mrs. Claus for the for the Mrs. Claus workshop? The quality of your deeds for the Arts Council reflects the quality of your efforts. Your vision, good humor, gracious demeanor, and style touch us all. Thank you so much, and please join me in applauding our flag. Special cookbook is the Bravo cookbook from the Philadelphia Orchestra. And we don't know what's I'd like to call up Deb McCausland. We applaud you, Deb, for exemplifying the mission of the Adams County Arts Council to promote an environment in which the arts are supported, enhanced, and enjoyed by community and visitors. And does Deb promote? Those of you who know Deb know of her superb work in the community for Adams County Television, the Land Conservancy, the Bicentennial 2000 Committee, and the Arts Council. You have supported in particular the partnership between the Land Conservancy and Arts in the Orchard. You have served on our nominating committee, and we saw you at the Heritage Festival last September with video camera in hand, tripod nearby, taping that wonderful event again coordinated by Steve Martin. Deb, you love history and art, music, and the land. We are here tonight to applaud you for being a wonderful team and catalyst for the arts in Adams County. Thank you for continually reminding us how fortunate we are to live in this place at this time and promoting arts programs of all kinds for all nations. Our third applause recipient is Linda. Linda, we thank you for your long-standing service as a member of the programming committee and your continuing involvement to this day. You amazed us with your spirited promotion of dance athletics last year, and applaud you for that wonderful assessment by the Service Theater after the performance. You stepped forward to organize the Artist Studio Tours, and you are currently the chair for the Popular Strand this week. value the poem and the painting, the dance and the opera, Broadway, the puppet and the piper. We thank you, friends, for your The fourth applause award goes to Jerry and Don Markle for their efforts in organizing the National Gallery of Art bus trip for our members and friends. A family emergency today has prevented them from being here tonight, but I still want to tell you a little bit about their efforts for the Arts Council. Some of you have been on the bus trips, and they possess marvelous organizational skills and in-depth knowledge of the exhibits in Washington. And you should know that Jerry, in her business, adds our Expression newsletter to every community welcome gift basket that she presents to every newcomer in the county. She also called me this morning and wanted you to know that they are planning the 4th annual bus trip in mid-June, and that more information will be forthcoming in the newsletter. There's one other person I wanted to applaud. Bob Apple. He wasn't sure. Okay. Bob designed the new banner. It's here today. I just picked it up yesterday. This is a result of a collaboration between Bob McElhaney and Chris Driscoll, our graphic arts designer. And doesn't it look beautiful? When I first saw it yesterday, I took my breath away. You should know that Bob has donated a second banner to hang in the middle window of the Arts Council office across from the Majestic Theater. And that'll help us become even more visible. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you.
Now Paul Held will introduce our special guest this evening. Our thanks to Gettysburg College and Suzanne Flynn in particular for facilitating Ms. Shepherd's visit with us tonight.
I first had the good fortune to hear our guest speaker about a year ago in Philadelphia at the League of American Historical Theaters seminar, where both she and her partner from Toronto, Janice Barlow, were speaking about the process that boards go through in dealing with the performing arts space. And again, I'd like to thank Gettysburg College, who helped us facilitate having Susan here tonight. Susan, I was very pleased to hear earlier this year the community and Gettysburg College committee for the renovation of the Majestic Theater chose Susan and Ms. Barlow to help us with this process. So particularly this year, there's an awful lot between the bicentennial and Adams County. Culturally is growing in wonderful ways. As Judy mentioned, to thank by all means our representatives and senators. And I might add, send a letter to the governor, who just put another $1 million into the till for the Pennsylvania Council on the Arts, which we are recipients of. He also received the Arts Leadership Award earlier this week in Washington. I was prepared to talk about Susan's wonderful bio, but she assured me that she's going to talk about it. So without any further ado,
so I was not going to stand back there, and I hope my voice carries. I had a little bit of a cold, so if it doesn't, just yell, and I will indeed go back there and talk to the microphone. I'm delighted to be in Gettysburg tonight. Did I say that properly? Gettysburg, not Gettysburg. I am working with Janice Barlow on the project. Janice actually has her own firm, and I'm not a partner in it, but she assembles teams for different projects. And she asked me if I would like to be involved on this team because I had some experience that was really relevant to this particular project. I have worked in a college atmosphere of major university, as a matter of fact, Florida State, in Tallahassee as a presenter in the performing arts there. And I also have run and managed as a CEO 2 historic theaters. So she thought those 2 pieces of background would be real helpful for you here. I was delighted to say yes because I love Gettysburg. I'm a history freak. I a little bit about myself and give you an idea about my career in the arts, and then a little bit about historic theaters in general, and then bring that home and talk a little bit about Majestic and the project here. And I suppose if I would be very accurate, I need to start off by telling you that this is really my fourth career. I started off life after law school by going down and running a charter sailboat in the British Virgin Islands, and I was the cook and first mate and all that. Did that for several years. Moved back to Florida, where we chose to live aboard the boat, the man I was married to at the time, and we needed warm climates, we could live aboard the boat. So I started working on land as a lawyer for Florida Rural Legal Services, and I help migrant farm workers, and I know there are a lot of migrant farm workers in this area as well. The farm workers I was helping at the time were primarily sugarcane cutters, the cane fields in Belle Glade and Inner Florida. Those of you who have never been to Inner Florida really need to make a trip sometime, because if you go past the 10 miles of coast throughout the state, you are in major rural country. It's cattle, they raise lots of cattle, they raise lots of horses. A lot of the vegetables you get during the winter are coming to you from Florida. And now actually they're coming from all over the world, but a lot. Carrots, celery, potatoes, broccoli, ornamental flowers, all of those things, and I helped farm workers in all of that. And then I had the opportunity to go out to Key West, which provided the opportunity to keep a sailboat there and get a job there. So I went there, and I was the founding director of the Legal Services Program in Key West, where I was for 8 years, and helping all of the people who didn't have enough money to afford a lawyer in Key West. Around about that time, I got involved in the arts, and I had never, ever been involved in the arts before. Well, I played the violin a little bit when I was a kid, but that didn't last for more than 4 or 5 years. And my parents had taken me to ballet performances and an occasional concert when I was growing up, but I wouldn't call us an arts family at all. And I had never thought about it as a possible career. But I had a time in my life when I had a whole lot more time on my hands than I had before, and a friend of mine said, asked me a question, which you will never let me forget now. She said, Susan, why don't you come help me stage manage? Because she was working on a theater production of the musical Pippin in Key West, in a very small theater. It only had 94 seats. It was smaller than this place, really smaller than this place, tiny little stage. And I said, oh gosh, Jeannie, that would be so boring. Why would anybody want to do the same thing night after night after night, which is what you do as a stage manager. But I did it, and I loved it. I just loved it. I loved it from the first moment I started it, because I was able to bring my organizational talents, and I've always been an organizer, to the arts, and then it turned out that I love the arts. I just had never really known that. So I worked in this theater for about 1.5 years, and as I was doing that, I had an opportunity in my life. I went through a divorce, I didn't have any children, that I could make changes if I wanted. And I decided that I didn't want to practice law anymore. I loved it, but I didn't want to practice it anymore. And I decided I would go back to school and get a Master of Fine Arts degree in theater management. I didn't really need it. I'd had enough management experience at that time to just sort of go off on my own, but I really thought it would be fun. It would be a kick, and I felt absolutely changing careers in midlife like that would be a little easier if I had a degree behind my name. So I did that, and I love that. I mean, it was so much fun to go back to school. They call us, and I'm sure that acronym is used here as well, Mature Adult Returning Students, MARS. And it means that you are older than the normal school-age, college-age kids, and you're going back to school in general, getting a graduate degree. A lot of people are getting their undergraduate degrees. So I got the theater degree. Along the way, you can't tell your life story in your careers without interjecting a little bit of personal life. Along the way, I married the dean of the School of Theater. So I was stuck there for a while. And I became, after graduation, what we call a presenter. And it's a very rarefied term. It has a specific meaning. And I thought it might be worthwhile explaining it to you because it does relate to the Majestic Project. A presenter is a term that you usually use when you're trying to compare it to being a producer. Producers and producing companies create the artwork. If you're a theater company, my little Key West Theater was a producing company. We hired the actors, we picked out the scripts, we hired the scenic designers, and then we put it all together and did the rehearsal, and we put it up on the stage, sold tickets, made money, actually, we lost money, but we did bring money in. And then we would go on to the next thing. So you're creating the product. And forgive me for using marketing terms, but those of us in the arts nowadays realize that you have to use marketing terms to talk about what you do. A presenter, on the other hand, is somebody or an organization, the term can apply both to individuals or organizations, who goes out and seeks work, artistic work, to bring in, and you contract with it. And that way you have a whole variety of art available to you, and you don't do it yourself. You're sort of a purchaser, so to speak. So that's what presenter means. It looks like what will be happening at the Majestic, and this is far too early in the process to give you any finite and final opinions, but it looks like the recommendation is probably going to be that the Majestic be a presenting theater. Not that it house a ballet company and a local symphony orchestra and a theater company, but that it get its work from outside and bring it in. And it can also contract local artists. We wouldn't necessarily recommend against that, but what wouldn't be creating its own artwork. So I was a presenter at Sword State for several years doing their, what we call the artist series, bringing in dance companies, Broadway musicals, classical music, and what we call a multidisciplinary presenter, because I wasn't stuck in any one subgenre. I did all sorts of stuff. And after that, I did that for about 6 years, and then I moved on up. I kept wanting to come up north and get away from the heat and the humidity and the lime green and orange and yellow furniture and color schemes that you see throughout Florida. So I got a new job in Greensboro, North Carolina, running an historic theater, and it was my very first experience with historic theaters. And from the day I walked into that auditorium, I was a convert, and I have since become absolutely passionate about historic theaters and what they can do for communities, what they have done and what they can continue to do in the future for communities. They have a magic about them that is unduplicated anywhere, any place. Kennedy Center doesn't have it. Lincoln Center doesn't have it. Fort Theater has it in DC, and other historic theaters have it. But you cannot duplicate the charm and the aura and the magic that these places have when they've been renovated and reopened. And at the time that most of these theaters were built, and there was a period, this is the history lesson, I'm sneaking in it in not so subtly, but this is a history lesson. When these theaters were built, most of them between the late 1900s and about 1920 to 1930s, they were built as community centers, and they were indeed community centers at the time. There was no motion picture industry, there was no TV, there were no video stores, and these theaters were the arts places in town. There would be touring Shakespeare companies, there would be touring sopranos, there would be touring musicians, and most of them, and this one, was a vaudeville house. And vaudeville is a particular niche in American theater history. It occupied maybe 50 to 60 years, give or take a little bit, and its height was right at the turn of the century. And vaudeville specialized in bringing in lots of little short pieces, little vignettes. And when they did a vaudeville bill, it was very strange. It was not unlike MTV today. They would have a bill of about 10 acts. They could range from a magician who pulled rabbits out of his hat to a coloratura soprano who would sing very formal opera arias, to jugglers, mimes, some shtick, the people, Charlie Chaplin kind of stuff. And they would just run seamlessly through a program. And you weren't expected to stay, because sometimes the bills would be 3.5 to 4 hours long. So people would be moving in and out. And often the theaters built at that time, during a particular time, didn't even have solid wooden doors. They would simply have drapes, so that you could move from the auditorium out to the lobby and leave. And because of that, many of them had very small lobbies. It's really fascinating architecture to realize how form follows function. Since not everybody came in at the same time, nor did they leave at the same time, there was no need for huge lobby spaces or for lots of restrooms. So, old theaters that we're now trying to renovate have the historic theaters are just wonderful, wonderful places. And at the Carolina, I came to a theater that had just gone through a pretty major renovation. Not as major as this one will be, but a pretty major renovation. And then 2 or 3 years later, I was recruited by the Grand Opera House in Wilmington, Delaware. And I went there as president and CEO. This was the 1871 Opera House, built in Wilmington, and it is absolutely gorgeous, just absolutely gorgeous, little jewel box. And I left that, went off to a job in Philadelphia running a major regional film festival for a couple of years. And then I'm now in my 4th career because about, a year and a half ago, I opened my own consulting practice. I got a little tired of working for boards of directors and having big organizations and worried about meeting the payroll and how I was going to pay all the bills at the end of the month. And I decided it was a whole lot easier worrying about my own bills than worrying about a major organization. So here I am. And what we're doing for the Majestic Project is really doing a feasibility study that looks at a lot of different practical and sort of philosophical issues. Number one was the building in good enough shape to even think about renovating it? And that's already been answered. And yes, indeed it is. It's in very good shape. How many of you are from Gettysburg? Not yet. How many of you remember that theater before it was multiplexed?
Yeah,
Ooh. Wow. Sometimes these multiplexes occur and they just absolutely ruin the spaces. Another little note about historic theaters. When they were built as vaudeville houses, as this one was, there tends to be a lot of backstage space because there were live performances going on, and then you'll have dressing rooms because there were live performers. There are also a lot of historic theaters that are called, it just escaped me what they're called, but they were built for movies because during this brief period around the turn of the century into the 20s and 30s, the industry changed dramatically, and what were originally vaudeville houses, and people never thought that they would be anything but vaudeville houses, became silent screen houses because movies just leapt to the forefront of the entertainment possibilities at that time. No one had any idea how quickly they would grow and how much they would overtake the world. So they gradually went into vaudeville houses, and you would have the live vaudeville built, and then you would have some shorts. And you would have theater orchestra that would play live accompaniment for those shorts. It's wonderful music, and you can find now there are actually some groups out there who do that. They go to historic theaters dressed in period attire and do a bill and an evening's performance of what live theater orchestras did at the time. They're quite wonderful. So then you had that little period of time. Silence lasted, I'll bet you no more than 10 to 20 years. And then the theaters began to be obsolete because the talkies and the technology that was required in order to make the talkies work, the old theaters just didn't adapt very well. So as we moved toward the 40s and 50s and then the 60s, a lot of these old theaters were raised. Nobody saw, excuse me, nobody saw any possibility of being able to keep them economically viable. However, those that were raised were saved by passionately committed community folks who didn't want to see these theaters die. And when you go into a city as I do and talk to people who have historic theaters renovated, you hear the most wonderful stories. People who had their first date with their spouse in the historic theater. People who remember seeing Gone with the Wind or The Sound of Music for a little later one. And the theaters go back in the community's history for a very long way. Often they were used as places for political debates in the old days, and they really were community centers. And every good term, good use of that word, really vital and vibrant community centers. And it looks as though that's exactly what the Majestic can be once again. It was that before, and as the plans progress for what it will be again, I have every reason to believe, and I'm sure all of us on the consulting team as well, that it will once again be a vital community center. And the wonderful thing about it is that you will have brought a building full circle from its original don't have our recommendations together yet about what the programming will be at the Majestic or what our recommendations might be about it. This is always the piece that is most accessible to the community and that people are most interested in. I can, though, just give you a little bit of an idea of the places I've been that I know about how historic theaters operate in the cities that have renovated them, just to give you a little bit of background. First of all, it's really, really, really important that when you look at a historic theater, you place it in context in the actual city and region where it is. Because each has had a different history, and each region has a different history, and each city has a different history. So it's impossible to go out and make templates and say that any theater of a particular size is going to do this and this and this. It just won't work. There are local politics, there are regional politics, there are state politics. Different regions have different types of music and different types of performances they're interested in. When I went to North Carolina, which is a state that has a tremendous reputation and tradition in handicrafts and those kinds of homespun arts, pottery, textiles, weaving, all of those kinds of things. They also really, really like acoustic, folk music, Celtic music. Most of the state was settled by people from the British Isles. And they have not that many minority cultures that have moved in, other than the African American. In Greensboro, for instance, our city was 2/3 white, 1/3 African American, and beyond that, there really wasn't too much else in the way of the cultures of other colors. And I had known virtually nothing about that kind of music, but I began programming it because it seemed to work. In my first year, the theater grew dark for 2 years, and I still to this day don't know how I pulled it off. Chris wanted me to include some little vignettes from my life. So the first season I got Emmylou Harris, Garrison Keillor, and the Chieftains. And my staff, who knew nothing about music, they didn't know who the Chieftains were. And they said, who is this and why are you doing that? And they were sort of muttering down the hall that I was making a huge mistake, and they'd known it all along. As soon as the notice of the Chieftains went in the newspaper, the phones rang off the hook, and it was sold out in 3 days. And, of course, the staff then thought I was God. That was wonderful. And it just, those three things to me were going to work in that city. They were going to work in that theater, because you don't need a whole, most of these places really have pretty good natural acoustics. Most of them do. And so you try to program things that are going to do well in the house, are going to look good and sound good, and then reflect the needs and the likes of the community. Now that might not be at all what would happen here, but it's what happened there and in that particular community. When I went to Wilmington, much older theater, much more grand in many ways, but our city in Wilmington had about 60% an African American audience, the rest white, but a lot of different cultures, a lot of Polish, a lot of German, a lot of Italian, again reflecting immigrant streams to the East Coast. And one of the things we did with enormous success was to bring in a whole lot of black comedians. Very successful. Brought in a whole group of people to the theater who had never come in before and had never felt that theater welcomed them. We made a bunch of money. And it was every bit as legitimate a use for that theater as putting a classical concert up on stage. A lot of times these theaters are used for things like the local dance schools recitals with all the little girls in their tutus. And I've told the story before, I think, at a meeting where the president of the college and I talked. I could always tell when there'd been one of those recitals because I would walk in the next day and there would be sequins littering the floor. And then when you bring those things to the theater, you also bring in the families. And when you bring the families, you're able to expose so many more people to what the theater does. And you know that grandmother and aunts and uncles and cousins and brothers and sisters and second cousins, all of those extended families come to see little girls do their dance recitals. You can also do things like we actually used to do whatever the Greensboro Miss America pageant piece was in our theater. And we did motivational speakers. And a lot of times we would rent it. We wouldn't be finding our own artwork, but we would just simply rent it in order to get the money to make it financially feasible. That's probably another alternative that will be offered from Majestic entire burden of running it. It doesn't run just on trying to make it on ticket sales. Okay, now I'm ready for questions. Yes?
What, if any, timetable is there for the renovation?
Ooh, may I?
I ran into Susan at the Blue Parrot, and I told her if there were any questions she didn't feel comfortable answering, she could point to me and I'll try to answer. I'm Suzanne Flynn, and I'm the executive assistant to the president at Gettysburg College and also associate professor of English there, and I'm chairing the committee, the planning committee that's working on this project. It's a very good question. All depends on the availability of funding. And right now we're waiting to hear from Governor Ridge. He may be calling right now. I don't think so. Yeah. As you no doubt know, Governor Ridge was here in this very room just about 6 weeks ago with a $3 million check for the borough of Gettysburg for the Historic Pathways Project, which is a wonderful thing. And at that time, he implied that the Majestic was still very much on their minds. And we've had sort of backdoor conversations that have suggested that in the next fiscal year, which begins July 1st, we'll be hearing. Hopefully early in the next fiscal year. So we're planning to hear from them sometime this summer. And meanwhile, we're moving forward with all of our planning so that if and when we do hear, we can sort of hit ground running. But probably from the time that we hear about the funding until opening the doors, 2 years would probably be a good estimate between the design work and the actual renovation process. So that's a pretty good idea. But I should point out that November 25th, 2000, will be the 75th anniversary of when the Majestic opened its doors. So get ready for a big gala fundraising event that night.
Pull out those checkbooks.
Yes.
Other questions?
Yes.
Is there any possibility that films might continue to be shown in the Majestic in the future?
Yes, and this is a good thing that I can give a positive answer instead of a negative one. From all we've looked at, we are going to be recommending that it continues to have a capability to be a film venue. Now, there are some technical issues that come up here, by the way. It's not cheap to have good projection equipment and a very good screen. And I think there's some issues about whether that equipment will stay in and the Majestic might still continue to use it, or there might have to be more equipment bought. There's also some thought about maybe a smaller screening room rather than just the large auditorium. Because as much as you can, if you can make multi-use purpose of the space, you're going to be more and more flexible. So the college has been talking about possibly considering moving some of its film functions over to the theater, and yes, keeping it as a space where there would be projection facility in the major hall as well. I haven't gotten to exactly what films it might be. I suspect it's not going to be first run, although I don't know the area around here that well yet. But there are art films and certainly a lot of classics. I, for one, would love to be able to see them do some of the old silent films on the stage, on the screen, and then have some capability for the theater orchestra so they can come in. They're wonderful fundraising events, by the way, and they are a kick. When you hear these orchestras play the soundtracks, they weren't even called soundtracks, but play the scores to the silent films, they are just wonderful. Many of the old theaters, and I don't remember this one about Majestic or not, were actually built not only with the orchestra pit, but with organs that came up and down out of the ground. You've seen the Fox and Atlanta and some other big ones. They still do that. And theater organ is a whole other part of musical society. There are theater organ societies in this country that guard their theater organs jealously and zealously, and they make up a whole other part of organdom. I don't remember.
It did indeed. In 1952, when the theater was renovated to its current format before it was described by a Gettysburg College grad who lives in Florida, actually owned an instrument we found out.
Did it get sold?
It did get sold. The theater in its current formation, the organ chambers are now gone, but they were in space, either in the larger auditoriums, they were in the upper level, and there was an archway.
One of the things that's happening now with theater organs is that they figured out how to computerize them in a way that makes them capable almost of being like player pianos. And then you can have recordings made by professional musicians playing on that organ. And then you program it to replay whether or not the musician is there. And it's an option to help you still on the circuit for good players who used to play. They're dying off daily, but they have trained actually some apprentices to a certain extent who still do this, and they do go around. They're wonderful. Other questions? Yes.
Just more curiosity. After the renovation, what's the seating capacity of the Majestic Theater for an audience?
I think it's about 1,000.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
I was thinking maybe a couple hundred or something. I've only been in it once.
This is another little piece of arcane historic knowledge. When theaters were built, in the old days, people were smaller and their rear ends were a lot. So, and I'm going to be a generous one myself, so I can say that. When theaters go through renovations, you really have to accommodate. Now, I don't know, the seating there is not that old because it's from the movie times, but sometimes you're going into historic theaters and you've got original seating. So when you go in and you put in new seating, you have to consider that. The other, when you go to the theater and somebody's head's directly in front of you, what a drag that is. The way you get aside from that is to stagger your seats. You lose seats when you do that, and the managers hate it because you're one less or 10 or 20 or 100 fewer seats for potential revenue. Another way you do it is that you can buy seats and they come in sort of about a 4-inch size range. And believe it or not, if you have a couple of 21-inch seats and a couple of 22 inches and then maybe a 23, you can grab extra inches, which ultimately end up with extra seats throughout theater. The other thing that happens is balconies in the old days tended to be pretty bad. In the South, the balconies were for the segregated audience, and the African Americans often had their own entrance, their own staircase, their own bathrooms, their own ticket booths, their own concession stands. They literally, in no way, at any time in an evening's entertainment, looked at or talked to or touched a white audience member. So those seats were, often they were benches and they were very, very close together. And so the seating capacity of a theater was very, very high when people were being treated like cattle. So you generally use, this is a very long-winded answer, you generally lose a fair number of the original seats once you go through a renovation, but it's all to the best.
And the acoustics are good?
I don't know. I think it's going to have to depend on what the acoustics were prior to it being multiplexed. It's really hard to tell that now. But if they were good beforehand and if the renovation is done well, the acoustics should be pretty okay. Now, if they were good to begin with, you're not going to get great ones. But I have not heard that they were either great or that they were bad, so I'm assuming pretty average, which is probably pretty okay. Those vaudevillians, they didn't use mics. They were singing, talking, whatever, without amplification, so, and they were able to make themselves heard. Yes?
On a balcony will be restored.
Yes. Now, I'm not sure, are there two balconies?
No.
That's one. Some technical equipment may end up having to go in there, so it may be that it won't be totally seats, but often a projection booth will be put in, changed from the original, and sometimes you need a lot of space with lights and sound speakers, things like that. And that's beyond me technically, so I don't know.
Well, I think there's the Hayford is that balcony. Yes.
Right. Made a lot of noise, right? Again, in the South, a lot of the balconies had chicken wire. This is really a very sad story. A lot of balconies had chicken wire put over them, so the African American audiences could not throw anything down on the white audience members below. I mean, it really did resemble a cattle car in some ways. So I don't know what the plans of the balcony totally would be. It really will depend a little bit both on seating capacity and whatever technical arrangements need to be made. Yes?
What ways are you addressing the parking issue?
Well, we're looking at it. And I have to say, this is one of the things that no matter what city you go to, and no matter how good the parking is on an objective scale, every community believes this parking is terrible. And I came in at 5:30 tonight and parked within a block and a half of the Blue Parrot in a meter. that to me is pretty good parking. There is the capability, physical capability, to add some decking space to the existing municipal garage and put in more spots there. It's, of course, pretty pricey, so how that's going to be paid for is something else. I believe that one of the things that's being done as part of the team, it's just not my particular assignment, is to try to get a handle on how many parking spots there are in the general area. So an honest answer is we're thinking about it, we're concerned about it, but I personally don't have the knowledge. Other questions?
The extra space that's there on the side.
Yes, so what's affectionately called a gymnasium?
Yeah.
Right.
What is going to be done?
Oh, lots of things floating around in the ozone right now about that. Ranging from having it be large banquet rooms that could then be subdivided and used for public spaces, both for the college and for the community. Office space is another possibility. Screening rooms for film is another possibility. What other things have come
Well,
up?
the biggest thing is support space for the theater.
Right.
The back of house. The theater itself has dressing rooms that are like something like Phantom of the Opera underneath the stage. I mean, they wouldn't be really usable or non-standard. So dressing rooms, green rooms, showers for the performers, things like that have to go in that adjacent space. So I would think at least the back half of that space would have to be divided off as support space in the theater, and then the front half is sort of available for other ideas, of which there have been many.
Many. Anything else? I think that's it. Thank you very much. That concludes our meeting. Please join us for refreshments.